Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is an American film that was released in 1916. This film is said to be the one that inspired Walt Disney to later make his 1937 animated classic. Now, one thing that I want to correct is on Internet Movie Database. We all know how I feel about Internet Movie Database, but it says that this film is the first movie Walt Disney ever saw. That is a massive falsehood. Okay, because here it says in he is quoted as saying, I don't know why I picked Snow White. It's a thing I remembered as a kid. I saw Margaret Clark in it in Kansas City one time when I was a newsboy. They had a big showing for all the newsboys, and I went and saw Snow White. It was probably one of my first big feature pictures I had ever seen. Yeah, a big feature film. Okay, in the Edwardian era, which is when this film was released, short films were the thing. So I'm sure that Walt Disney and his brother Roy were the type of kids who would sneak into the theater and see the short films. Okay. Remember, short films. You got to take into consideration how long films were back in those days. Okay. So, yeah, this was his first feature length film, and that's why it stuck with him. Okay. And actually, he was obsessed with Alice in Wonderland before this one. Okay, when he had the Laugh-O-Gram studio, there was Alice's Wonderland. He had the Alice comedies and everything. Yeah, so he was obsessed with Alice in Wonderland. And so that's probably why he says, I don't know why I picked Snow White. Anyway, so just making that. But for Internet Movie Database to say it was the first movie he ever saw, that's a lie. So Margaret Clark played Snow White. Now she was actually um next to Mary Pickford. She was second only to Mary Pickford. And she was also uh, under contract with Famous Players, as was Mary Pickford. Um, Now, one thing about the cast is that, oh, where is it? Alice Washburn is plays Witch Hex, but so does Mary Robson. She was replaced with the originally scheduled Alice Washburn. Yeah, there was something going on there. I mean, Alice Washburn and Mary Robson play Witch Hex, and the Dowager Queen is uncredited. There's Kate Lester, but I thought for sure there was somebody else who played her. Anyway, so in this one, as for the story itself, I actually enjoy the beginning. You see Father Christmas come in. He waves his hand and a Christmas tree shows up, and then he sets up these dolls. Those dolls are the players. They're they're the actors in this show. It I love it. I absolutely love it. And this this little child comes down and spies on Santa. And that, I mean, that's the greatest introduction to a movie I have ever seen. And now I'm not going to go into full detail of the story because we know the story, um, but when you watch, you can see how heavily inspired Walt Disney was with this. I mean, the backdrops and the costuming, I mean, even just with the Huntsman, you can see where he was inspired by this movie for his animated classic. Because I mean, and, and and even when Snow White is in the cottage for, the dwarf's cottage. And I mean, you just see so much. And you also have to remind yourself that they didn't have home video. So it's not like he could just go home and watch the movie and get that. He had to go from memory on this. And so he did really well. This was um and I mean, I loved the introduction with Father Christmas or Santa, and Margaret Clark was a wonderful Snow White. The other actors and actresses did well. I've heard Alice Washburn before. I just can't think of where I've seen her before. And she's in a series called Colonel Nutt. And they're a short series of shorts. But anyway, but Mary Robson was played the same character as Alice. Um, and then Kate Lester. This one explains the name Snow White, and uh, with her name being white as snow. Um, Now, another thing is that this was thought to be lost in a vault fire. So many of those fires, and over the years, but they found an almost complete print with Dutch intertitles. It's missing a few scenes, but it was found in Amsterdam and it was restored in 1992 at the George Eastman House. So, but anyway, so Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, it's an American film released in 1916. And yes, this inspired Walt Disney to make his timeless classic.